302, I'm Jackie Barris. On this week's show, we leave our COVID confines and hit the great outdoors at Rockwood Park to learn about their garden tour and about their architecture. So lace up those sneaks. 302 is coming your way. Hey 302, we are at Rockwood Park talking about the garden tour and of course the architecture behind this historic place. I'm joined now by Judy Filipkowski. She has been a volunteer here for 31 years. Judy, thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you for having us.
Now I understand one of the great things about the historic place here is that there was one family, 120 years, 3 generations. Tell us a little bit about the Bringhursts and the whole family.
Well, it started with Joseph Shipley, who was a banker who was sent to England to save an import-export company, and he saved them actually from bankruptcy. And so when he decided to come home, he had been leasing a house just almost like this from an architect named George Williams. So he had Williams draw up plans to build this house here on this elevated site in Wilmington with overlooking, actually you can see the Delaware River from here, and water was part of the importance of the site. And he came here about 1851, died in 1865, leaving the house to his 2 sisters. He also had many other siblings, and in 1892, when the last sister died, they had an auction. Anna Shipley Bringhurst won the auction and gave it to her son, Edward Bringhurst Jr., who moved in with 3 of his 4 children. And the last of those, Mary, lived to be 100 in 1965, and she left it to her sister Nancy's daughter, Edith. And Edith died in 1972 in her will, leaving it to the public, actually. That's how we got it. And that's how it's been run by Newcastle County ever since.
Now it's really a gorgeous, gorgeous home. Whenever you drive up, one of the first things that I noticed were the spires, or you call them the
finials. Finials is another word, and they're a decorative feature of a Gothic architecture. And this, in the literature that's written about it, it's a country Gothic house. There's no other home like it in all of the United States. It's considered the finest example of country Gothic. And you see the sharp pointed roof. You see all the little details. You notice the finial. You notice from the finial going down is this decorated board. It's called a barge board. And of course the decorations on the door. The front of the house is asymmetrical. And when you go around in the back, you'll see it's very symmetrical. This is the north end of the house and the entrance. And the corners have these little white like steps. They're called coins. That's a distinctive feature of an Italianate style architecture. So not just Gothic, but it's a few styles. And they had an important element of architecture hiding the corners, also giving it support. And then if you look up at the chimneys, are all irregular, 3 or 4 chimneys at a time. And they're not just for all the fireplaces, it's for the heating system that flows air up and down through the house. Now, Mr. Shipley lived in Liverpool with the latest and greatest inventions, including macadam. And Shipley Road was made of macadam, and supposedly the first macadam road in the United States. And we think, at least I think, he knew Mr. Macadam. There was a Mr. Macadam. And so in 1913, the sister that didn't live here, Bessie, planned to come home from her life in Ireland and built that whole wing on the far right with 3 more bedrooms and 3 more rooms downstairs, which are now offices and meeting rooms. And so part of the estate, the way it was set, the house, on the footprint with the sun in the morning where he had his breakfast room, was set into this gorgeous garden as landscaping. And so his whole love of horticulture gave him prizes from the Philadelphia Horticultural Association as well. And he had native trees, local trees, and they were prizes. We still have some of the original trees, and large expanses of lawn, which of course are not good for the environment these days, but they were looking for beauty.
And they certainly found it here.
And it's beautiful. He had 211 acres. The house cost about $35,000 to build, and the 4 farms he bought ended up costing about $10,000. And eventually the farms went away and trees grew up and you couldn't see the river anymore, which was really sad.
Tell me a little bit about the conservatory. Now, this is the only conservatory that's connected to a home, is that right?
Exactly, yeah.
Tell me a little bit about how it came to be and why.
Well, I don't know exactly how it came to be, but in England, of course, there were a lot of glass conservatories, and so that was where the plants lived, not grew. Wasn't plant the seeds and grow it up. That's where you had an exhibit, and he had beautiful glass and lead metal in there, and shelves for the plants. And actually, the youngest daughter was married in that house, in that little room. Her dinner was in that little room, and the first outdoor wedding that we have record of was out here on the lawn from Edith Sellers. So that's another connection too to the Sellers Iron Works that was here in Delaware. Her husband worked for them. So we have many connections to the other people in the area. That's another part of the important part of the house, the family, the architecture, the gardens, and the connections to local people of importance.
So there are several different types of architecture style that are blended into one.
Yes.
There are several phases to the house depending upon, as the years went on. So there's just so much to see whenever people come out here. So if somebody wants to, really do a deep dive on the architecture, can they just ask someone? Can they go online? What can they do?
It's really complicated. All our archives are at the University of Delaware Special Collections, and if they really want to do the research, a lot of it's digitized, but rural country Gothic is not really out there as a big book, but people have written about it. It might be hard to find.
So they can dig out a book from the library, or they can come see Judy. Judy, thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you.
I appreciate it. We'll be right back.
Good morning, I'm Julie and welcome to the 302.
Welcome back. We're talking about the estate and garden tour here at Rockwood Park. We're right outside of the mansion, and we're joined now by Kathy Andrajeski. She is a certified horticultural therapist. Now, a lot of people would say, what is a certified horticultural therapist doing here at Rockwood? But there's a combination, there's a marriage between the mansion and medicine. Tell us about it, Kathy.
Okay, well, originally, some of the residents who lived in this house were the Bringhurst family, and the Bringhurst actually were in the pharmaceutical business, and they had a pharmacy in downtown Wilmington, Delaware, which is very close to this area. So they are part of the pharmaceutical connection here. And then also the garden that we're actually standing is a memorial garden for another doctor whose name is Dr. Jason Campbell. He was a World War II veteran, and he was a local physician in Newcastle, Delaware. His daughter lives in this immediate area, and she and her father used to spend lots of time here in the garden, so this is a living tribute to her father here in the garden.
Now, there's so much to unpack. First of all, let's talk a little bit about why there is this specialized garden here. It's not just for beauty, but you mentioned that there's a connection to the pharmaceutical, the family, but it's also very personal to the family in terms of one of their sons.
Yes, exactly. So the apothecary garden, the purpose of this is Newcastle County is extremely committed to planting native plants. So the plants that you see in this garden have been selected because they're native plants, and they also have been selected because of their apothecary background. If you walk through the garden, you will see little signs that kind of identify the plants for you and then tell you what medicinal purposes these plants would have been used for in the time when people practiced more of an apothecary style of medicine as opposed to pharmaceuticals that we use today. Right here, this beautiful porch that you see attached to the mansion was placed there because one of the Bringhurst children actually suffered from tuberculosis. So they built the sleeping porch because it was healthier for him to sleep out in the night air. So that is why that particular structure has been added onto the mansion.
It's really gorgeous. And when you talk about the emphasis on native plants, a lot of times you see plants brought from outside of the country, palm trees and pineapples, but the things that you find here are things that you would find all over Delaware and in the region for that matter. That's what you mean when you say native, right?
Yes, because what you want to do with native plantings is native plants are plants that are native to this particular region. So they have grown here for years, and what they do is they support the life cycles of the animals, the insects, the birds that are also a part of this habitat that we have here. So yes, very important. And you know, I just completed a Delaware Master Naturalist program, and we're really coming to realize how critical it is for home gardeners, for parks, for all locations to start really paying attention to the planting of native plants to include biodiversity in our climate and, you know, our background.
So let's talk a little bit more about the concept of an apothecary garden. What kinds of plants will we find here when we come for the tour that could be used in the field of medicine?
Okay. So what we have here is, like I said, each one kind of has a sign on it. We have plants called irises, cinnamon ferns, spice bush, winterberry, blueberries. We have a series of different herbs over in pots in that part of the garden. Herbs are very good for antioxidants. They would very much be used in, you know, apothecaries for treating different types of illnesses. Treating anything like from the flu all the way to, they would take some parts of the plants, they would boil them, they would make them into like a mash, put them in a compress. They would then put those, maybe if someone had, you know, an achy joint or, you know, a part of their body was sore, they could, you know, make a compress out of them too. They would make teas to drink. So they use different parts of the plant for different medicinal purposes.
Now, when you come for a visit, everything has a little placard, but there's a really special feature of this garden that you mentioned a little bit earlier. It's a memorial. It's a beautiful trickling waterfall. Talk to me a little bit about that.
They wanted to make this in memory of Dr. Jason Campbell. So his daughter was instrumental in trying to create this garden. She walks here every day. She comes and helps and pulls weeds in this garden. They wanted it to be a very soothing, calming, peaceful place. And that's why they have the trickling water fountain. These big rocks that you see positioned throughout the pathway are called sitting stones. So you can sit and you can just kind of reflect. With horticulture therapy, we really try to get people to awaken their senses, what they hear, what they see, what they touch, what they smell. So it's really a sensory garden also. It provides, you know, opportunities to awaken your senses.
It really is exactly as you describe it. It's very soothing, but yet, you know, you feel calm and alert at the same time when you're in this space. Now, if someone who sees this wants to come and check out the different plants and the descriptions and check out the memorial, where do they have to go? And are there tours that people can take?
Yes. I actually offer an apothecary garden tour on Sunday evenings at 6 o'clock that people can sign up for. It's about an hour, you know, in length. And you can do that on the Rockwood website. You can sign up there. And I mean, it is open all the time, so if you come to just visit the park, you can do a self-guided tour and walk on the path here and, you know, kind of enjoy the garden too. But when you take the tour, you kind of get more of the history and you get more of the background of the different types of plantings that appear here in the garden.
Well, Kathy, thank you so much for spending time with us.
Thank you for having me. This has been a joy to be with you today.
It's our pleasure. We'll be right back. Hi, I'm Stacy Inglis, Vice President of Historical and Cultural Affairs here at the Tilton Mansion. Come across the Delaware 302 and learn about our history. Welcome back. We're talking about all the rich history and the beautiful plantings here at Rockwood Park, in the garden, and also the architecture behind the mansion. And of course, it takes a lot of work to preserve this for the generations to come who want to come out and enjoy the rich history here. I'm joined now by Grant Behrens. He is the president of the Rockwood Park Preservation Society. Grant, thank you very much for joining us.
Thank you for having me.
So talk to me a little bit about the role of the Preservation Society and why it's so important that you do what you do.
Well, a place like this takes an awful lot of work, and some of that work is best done by people who love the place but aren't necessarily going to be full-time employees. We are a group of volunteers who like to get together to share this incredible place with other people. Once you've been and visited and got into it, you'll see why it's so special. It's really quite unique. There's very few houses almost anywhere in the world where you can say one family lived here from the day it was built all the way through to when it became a museum. And very few of those have kept the family belongings, the family photographs, all the pet cemetery even, everything. It's like they just walked out and left it. So talking about this place is great fun, and we can help bring that message to more people by getting our volunteers as part of this group.
Now, I want to talk about the volunteers and how folks can come out and donate and all of that in just a little bit, but we're standing in front of the conservatory. It looks like an average, conservatory, but it really is different. In fact, the entire house is different. The mansion is different from any of the mansions that are in this area, right?
Oh, it's very special, yes. Now, obviously you can tell from my accent, I'm not from round these parts.
No.
And when I saw this place, I didn't think twice. It suddenly looked to me like I was back home in England. And I realized this type of architecture is reasonably common in certain parts of England, but very uncommon in America. All the big houses around this part are DuPont, French-style, gigantic edifices to their wealth. Whereas the person who built this, Joseph Shipley, he was not a pretentious man, very, very wealthy, very successful, but he wanted to build something that just happened to be exactly what he had in England. So he copied the house he had. In fact, he brought the architect over that had built that house and said, build me another one and make a few concessions to the climate. In England, we don't have warmth, we have rain. So he did make a few adjustments, but this conservatory we can see here is hardly any different from the one on the original house. In fact, they had all the parts made in England and shipped them over at a time when you could have had everything built here. And of course, one of the reasons it's still here is, as opposed to what people in America were building at the time, it's not made of wood, it's made of cast iron. So it withstood the ravages of time. Whereas nearly everything from that period, as you would be aware, things just get eaten by the weather. So this beautiful conservatory is actually unique in America.
Now, you mentioned some of the concessions for the weather, and I was looking at the stone itself. Now, one of those concessions being local stone to withstand the weather. Can you talk to us a little bit about the construction and those concessions?
That's one of the nice things about building in this particular area. We have this Wilmington blue rock. I think of the baseball team. That blue rock is especially good for building. It's virtually granite, so it's going to withstand time. And that would be a favoured building material almost anywhere. So it was very lucky to be able to get that. The style is of that English country house. The building materials, the blue rock was just perfect to create the same atmosphere as in Britain.
Now, volunteers are the lifeblood here at Rockwood. Can you talk to me a little bit about where you get them, what it takes to be, besides a love of history, to be a volunteer?
Well, actually, you don't have to be a history major. I'm not. You don't have to be an expert in anything here. We can show you all the information you need. All you need to do is like talking to people, and then you'll be a shoo-in. So if you are watching this program and you'd like to come and volunteer, give us a call, check on the website, go on to Newcastle County or just look for Rockwood on Facebook and make any contact there, and we'll take you in and show you how you can become a part of this wonderful place.
Now, I know that, preserving this wonderful place takes some money. So let's talk a little bit about the outreach, how we try to get people to donate, so that you can keep things running? I know, there are certain things that you do as fundraisers, but talk to me about that aspect of things.
Well, Rockwood Park is famous for its history of bringing people in. In fact, since I've been here 10 years, I've heard constantly about the Ice Cream Festival, which was probably one of the biggest, most successful privately run events anywhere in Wilmington, anywhere in Delaware. It was a real institution. People loved coming to the Ice Cream Festival. And that was run by volunteers. And that's the sort of thing we try and do. So it's not a lot of work, but if you've got lots of people, lots of hands, many hands make light work. So that's the sort of thing where we get our volunteers involved in. So you can have a lot of fun, you can help us raise money, you can help preserve this place, help bring the message to more people.
Now, if somebody wanted to find out more about the programs, about the Ice Cream Social, and you have a lot of programs, you have tours of the gardens, things happening all the time. Where do they go to find out what's happening?
Check out on Facebook, check out on Newcastle County's website, look for Rockwood, and you should have no difficulty finding something to entertain you. Just on Saturday, I think we've got a local poet laureate coming in and giving a sold-out performance of his poetry. And since that's sold out, the October one might be your better bet, which will be obviously Halloween themed. And I recommend this chap. He's comes highly recommended by no less a person than the county executive. So we have that. We have the paranormal tour on Saturday, again sold out, but there's lots more dates you can still go for, where we equip you with the equipment to find the paranormal. And we let you find that and experience it as you will. And I can tell you that many people have indeed encountered things they cannot explain. So get on the website, get on Facebook, join in.
Grant, thank you very much for joining us and sharing such a big slice of Rockwood with us.
Thank you.
And we'll be right back. Well, that'll do it for this episode of The 302. For more information on all of the amazing things that you can do and see here at Rockwood Park, be sure to check them out on their Facebook page. We leave you now with a stunning view from the Brandywine River. Until next time, I'm Jackie Ferris. We'll see you on The 302.